The night was cold, and the little house on the corner of Willow Street stood quietly under the dim streetlight, its peeling paint whispering stories of struggle and survival. Inside, Daniel sat at the kitchen table, staring at a half-written "room for rent" ad on his laptop. His 7-year-old daughter, Lily, was asleep in her small room, clutching a worn-out teddy bear. Daniel sighed, rubbing his tired eyes. He wasn't the kind of man who ever wanted a stranger living under his roof, but life had left him no choice. Ever since his wife passed away 2 years ago after a long battle with cancer, Daniel had been holding their small world together with nothing but love, determination, and the constant fear of losing what little they had left. He worked double shifts as a mechanic at a local garage, but between rent, bills, and Lily's school fees, he was sinking fast. So, when the ad finally went online that night, he whispered a quiet prayer. He didn't know who would answer, only that he needed someone decent, and soon. Yellow heart. Before we go further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the magic of unexpected connections, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel, Silent Hope. Your support helps us bring more stories that touch the heart and remind us what truly matters. Yellow heart. The next morning, Daniel's phone buzzed. A message popped up from a girl named Emily. She said she was a college student looking for a quiet, safe place to stay while finishing her degree. Her message was polite, even humble, but Daniel noticed she offered to pay 3 months' rent up front. It was unusual, but he didn't question it. They agreed to meet that evening. When Emily arrived, she looked nothing like what Daniel had imagined. She was wearing a plain gray hoodie, jeans, and sneakers, her brown hair tied into a simple ponytail. No jewelry, no designer bag, no air of privilege. She seemed ordinary. And yet, there was something graceful about her, a softness in her eyes that felt out of place in the rough world Daniel lived in. She smiled shyly as she stepped inside. "It's perfect," she said after looking around the small but tidy living room. "Warm, quiet, it feels like home." Daniel didn't know that Emily Hartfield, the girl standing in his humble kitchen, was the only daughter of billionaire real estate mogul Charles Hartfield. He didn't know that she had chosen to leave her father's mansion after a painful fallout, desperate to prove she could survive without the protection of wealth or a famous last name. She had taken her mother's maiden name, dropped her luxury wardrobe, and started over with a backpack and a heart full of hope. At first, life in Daniel's home was simple. Emily kept to herself, going to college during the day and helping with chores when she could. She often found Lily sitting at the kitchen table doing homework alone, her crayons scattered beside her math book. Slowly, the two bonded. Emily would help Lily with her drawings, teaching her how to shade and blend colors. Soon, laughter began to fill corners of the house that had been silent for far too long. Daniel watched quietly, grateful for the warmth that seemed to return to their lives. He had forgotten what it felt like to come home to the sound of someone singing softly in the kitchen, or to see his little girl smiling so brightly. There were moments when he'd find Emily making pancakes in the morning or patching up Lily's torn doll dress with a needle and thread, and something deep inside him would ache, because she reminded him of his late wife in ways he couldn't explain. Still, he never asked about Emily's past. She didn't offer much, and he respected that. But sometimes, when she thought no one was watching, her smile would fade. There was pain behind those soft brown eyes, a kind of loneliness Daniel recognized all too well. As the months passed, the bond between the three of them grew stronger. Daniel found himself waiting to hear her footsteps in the hallway after she came home from college, or to see her sitting with Lily on the porch, telling stories about stars. One evening, while washing dishes, he caught himself smiling for no reason. He realized that for the first time in years, their little house didn't feel empty. But life has a cruel way of testing happiness. One night, Daniel came home late from work to find Emily sitting on the couch, her eyes red from crying. She tried to hide her tears, but he noticed. Gently, he sat beside her, unsure what to say. After a moment, she whispered, "My father found me." Her voice trembled. "He wants me to come home, he thinks I've embarrassed the family." Daniel's heart sank. He didn't know the details, but he could tell this was more than a family argument. She looked like someone being pulled back into a world she didn't belong to anymore. "He doesn't understand," she continued. "He thinks I'm just running away, but I needed to know who I was without all of it. Without the money, the mansion, the name. I wanted to see the world through my own eyes, not through tinted glass." Daniel didn't know how to respond. He wanted to tell her she didn't owe anyone an explanation, that the person she'd become in this small house was real, kind, and good. But he stayed silent, afraid his words might sound foolish. The next morning, Emily was gone. Her room was empty except for a handwritten note on the bed. It said, "Thank you for giving me a home when I had nowhere to belong. Thank you for showing me what love looks like in its simplest, purest form. Please take care of Lily. Tell her I'll always remember her drawings. Emily." Daniel read the letter over and over, his chest tightening with a pain he hadn't felt since losing his wife. Lily cried for days, asking when Miss Emily would come back. Daniel didn't have an answer. The house felt hollow again, every corner echoing with memories of her laughter. Months went by. Daniel focused on work, trying to rebuild the routine they'd lost. But deep down, he missed Emily more than he could admit. She had become a part of their small family, then vanished like a dream. One stormy afternoon, a black luxury car stopped in front of the house. Daniel was under the porch fixing a loose gutter when he saw it. A tall man in a suit stepped out first, followed by a woman with familiar brown hair. Daniel froze. It was Emily, but not the Emily he remembered. She wore an elegant cream coat and carried herself with quiet confidence. Before he could speak, she ran toward him and wrapped her arms around him tightly. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I shouldn't have left without saying goodbye." Daniel stood still, stunned. Behind her, the older man approached, his expression humble. "Mr. Davis," he said quietly, "I'm Emily's father. I owe you more than I can ever repay." Over coffee inside the small kitchen, the truth unfolded. Emily had returned home after her father fell ill. She had taken over part of his company, determined to make changes, to focus on helping others, not just profit. But she couldn't forget Daniel or Lily. She told her father about the mechanic who gave her shelter without judgment and the little girl who made her believe in love again. Her father, moved by her sincerity, insisted on meeting them himself. "I thought I had everything," Emily said softly, looking around the modest home that had once saved her. "But it was here I learned what truly matters. You both gave me something money never could, a family." Tears filled Daniel's eyes. He had never imagined that the quiet college girl renting his spare room was a billionaire's daughter searching for meaning. He didn't care about her wealth. All he saw was the same kind, gentle soul who had once knelt beside his daughter, helping her color a paper heart. Over time, Emily became a constant part of their lives again, this time openly. She helped fund Lily's schooling anonymously, and Daniel's small garage received unexpected help through a private investor who wanted no credit. It took him months to realize that investor was Emily herself. And though they came from two very different worlds, something beautiful began to bloom between them, a connection built not on wealth, but on kindness, respect, and the quiet moments they shared under the same roof that had once brought them together. One summer evening, as the sun painted the sky in shades of gold, Daniel sat on the porch watching Lily play in the yard. Emily joined him, her hand brushing against his. Neither spoke for a while. Then, in a soft voice, she said, "Do you ever think some people are meant to find each other, no matter where they come from?" Daniel smiled faintly. "I used to think the world was too big for that. Now I'm not so sure." The wind carried the sound of Lily's laughter across the yard. For the first time in years, Daniel felt whole. The house that had once symbolized loss now stood as a place of love and new beginnings. Sparkling Heart, if this story touched your heart or reminded you that kindness still changes lives, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Silent Hope. Your support keeps us creating stories that warm souls and inspire hearts around the world. Sparkling Heart. Sparkle special request, comment below. Kindness finds its way home, if you believe love can appear in the most unexpected places. As twilight settled over Willow Street, the three of them sat together, the single dad, the little girl, and the billionaire's daughter who had found her way back to the truest kind of family. And somewhere in that quiet evening light, the universe smiled, because sometimes, fate doesn't need wealth or power, only a little hope, a little courage, and a heart willing to care.